Today we're installing a super cool product that Edge just came out with. It's a tuning solution for your 2020 and newer trucks. You don't have to pull the PCM, you don't have to send it in, you don't have to buy any fancy devices or rent them and send it back. It's all included with the box to put 2020 tuning on your F-250 Powerstroke. So what's unique about that is a lot of other people in the industry have similar options, but you got to pull the PCM and send it in. There's downtime. One person in the whole state has the right device that you need to tune it, but Edge includes everything in the box. Also, I know we're going to get asked in the comments, this is emissions on tuning. This is not delete. If you're looking to delete your truck or any of that stuff, this is the wrong video for you. This is emissions on EPA compliant tuning. And I believe they claim it adds 120 horsepower. I think the top end up to 150 horsepower, which is just incredible out of a box tuner. "2020 tuning for your F-250 Powerstroke." We're going to go over it today and this new product that Edge just released, where you can put a CTS3 with tuning on your truck, all cables included, no need to pull your PCM and send it off. Today we're going to drive the truck stock, we're going to dyno it stock, we're going to install it and see if their claims hold up to 100 to 110 horsepower peak power increases. So we're going to drive over to the dyno right now, give you a few driving impressions of how the truck feels, and kind of talk about the tuning and what's so different and special about it. One of the big things about tuning up until now is oftentimes you had to pull your PCM and send it somewhere, or one person in the state had the special tuning connector that you need to install it. And the dyno numbers they posted up are super impressive. Stock, you guys know, the 2020s actually drive really nice stock. They're a big bump over the 17 to 19 or the 11 to 19, depending on what you have done. With the new steel pistons, the higher injection pressure, and the new turbos, these things drive great. Let's see how much more you can add with just a tuner on it. So this customer today is Landis Smith. This is his truck. It's 100% stock, except he did put Banks throttle sensitivity booster on there, which he was pretty impressed with. I mean, it doesn't really add any power, just changes the sensitivity of the throttle from what I understand. This is going to do more than just change the sensitivity of the throttle. This is going to add peak horsepower, peak torque, more boost. It's going to overall increase the performance of the truck without just fooling the throttle sensitivity of the pedal. But we're driving it now 100% stock. We've driven it with the throttle sensitivity booster on it, and we're going to load up the tune and then afterwards drive it and tell you how we think it feels. But overall stock, I mean, these trucks are impressive. They're very, very impressive. We'll see if we actually notice a seat of the pants feeling also after we drive it. So stay tuned, follow along. We'll do the whole installation, show you how to install it, show you the gains on the dyno, and then drive it afterwards to tell you whether we think this is worth it. You know, we're finding more and more, a lot of people do want emissions on tuning. It sounds weird to a lot of you guys that delete, but we get requests every single day that people actually upset that there's not as many emissions on tuning. So this is pretty cool that Edge took the time to make this kind of product. Especially with the newer vehicles, the emissions aren't as unreliable. I mean, you get an 08 Powerstroke, they were some of the least reliable emissions equipment on a vehicle. But as the trucks have gotten newer and better turbos, better injection systems, better tuning from Ford, the emissions equipment doesn't have as many issues. So we're pretty excited to be able to test a product like this. It's a little new for us, but we're super excited to see how much better it can drive 100% stock. right, guys, we just got done running the baseline dyno numbers. Now, we did dyno it 2 different ways. There's more than one way to run a dyno, but we did it loaded and unloaded. So if you look in close right here, the lower lines, which is blue, is unloaded. That means it's just spinning the 4,000-pound roller. Oftentimes, your dyno numbers will come in slightly lower because of that, because there's not as much resistance, which doesn't allow you to build as much boost. The yellow line is a loaded dyno, and we did it at 50% load. What that means is they actually add an eddy current brake to the system so that it adds more load. It kind of like simulates a heavier truck going down the road or pulling a trailer or at higher speeds. So you will get more boost and it will measure more horsepower. So we're going to load on the tuner, dyno it afterwards, and show you the difference. Once you get the OBD2 port plugged in and the key forward, you should come to this prompt. You might have a few disclaimers you need to click on. The first step you want to do is update your device, and there are 2 ways to do that. 1 is you can use the Wi-Fi built into the device, or 2 is you can take the device, plug into a computer, and use their online software. We are going to use the device to connect to Wi-Fi and update it that way. Once it's on, you might have some disclaimers. After clicking the disclaimers, you click into Settings. Scroll down a little bit. First, you need to set up the Wi-Fi, so enter whatever email you want. Pick your Wi-Fi, enter in your password. Once it connects, you want to go back. It's now checking for updates. So it'll do everything all on its own. It'll check for updates and install them without you having to plug it into a computer or do anything. Device was up to date. All right, step 1, turn the vehicle ignition to run or on without starting. If you have a keyed ignition, turn the key to the position 2, don't start it. You have a push button, push the button without pressing the brake, click on tuning. Once it gets to this point, you are going to have to shut your doors and you cannot open them again until you're done. Make sure you grab everything with you, grab all the installation cables and the device and the instructions. It says to turn the key off, remove everything, and close your door, and you cannot open your door again until you're done. All right, I'm doing this for the first time. I've never done one of these before, but do not install this before you get to this point because you will need your edge cable over here under the hood. I'm going to give another disclaimer. It says at this point, do not enter the vehicle or open the vehicle doors until the unlock is complete and the factory PCM connector is reconnected. I don't know what will happen if you do that, but I suggest following their instructions. Connect up the battery cables, black to negative, red to positive. So it says in the engine bay, locate the PCM. It is located on the passenger side firewall. The PCM has 3 connectors to it. Disconnect the one closest to the passenger side, which would be this one. You disconnect it by pressing down and pulling up on the gray locking tab, and then pull the locking clamp back. You should release the connector, unplug the connector, and move it to the side. I recommend getting a screwdriver. It's kind of hard with your fingers. We're also standing up on the dyno, so I can't get right next to it. I'm really reaching from the front, but there's a little black connector right here. You kind of push that way on, and once you do push that way, the connector comes out pretty easily. Pull the connector, remove it completely, kind of pull it up and out of the way. Not a lot of length on those cables. Once you've got it disconnected, you're going to take their supplied connector and put it on the PCM. You're going to push it all the way on and then slowly jiggle it while pulling that on. You'll see it sliding with almost no resistance. Push it till it locks and clips. After you got everything connected, you take the cable and hook a little adapter. It actually just started making noises. And then you connect it up to the OBD2 port cable, which connects up to your edge. Once the tuner powers on, you want to select the tuning option from the menu and follow any prompts the tuner requests. It will now start to unlock the PCM. The module is ready to be unlocked. Press continue to begin the unlock process. It is successfully unlocked. All right, now that it's done, first step, unplug the OBD2 port, unplug the adapter, disconnect the battery, then you can unclip the adapter to the PCM, connect back up the factory connector, which is really tight. All right, we're gonna hop back up in the truck, finish installing the edge, run the cable, and tune the truck. The hardest part of this whole installation is just this cable. It's not that hard, but you do have to run it behind the dash and up onto the A-pillar, so we're gonna do that real quick. I start by popping this panel out. Use a plastic panel popper. You don't wanna damage your trim, especially if it's on a customer truck. This is what we like to use, but there's a lot of different options. Just gives you a little bit more access to get the cables and stuff through, and then I do recommend popping this off a little bit just so you can zip tie everything up a little better. Now that you got that popped down, just gives you a little more room to run the cables up and through. There's a lot of extra cable in here and you don't want it falling down and getting caught in your feet while driving. So after you install it, they do provide zip ties. I recommend zip tying the excess cable up under the dash. There's a little tab right here. It's not on all ears, but you can just pull it down, get the cable behind it. It is a really nice windshield mount. Now they do have a pillar mount, which is way better in my opinion. Solid metal and attaches right to the pillar, but we're just using the supplied windshield mount. You're gonna have plenty of cable when you're installing this. So what I recommend is you're plugging everything up, putting it up on the dash and pulling the excess back down through the bottom. I also recommend pulling this plastic film before you try to install it 3 times and it doesn't stick to the windshield. Got about this much excess cable because some people run it in different places. You could run it to the middle of your dashboard, you run it to other places, but after you plug in the OBD, you're going to want to coil up the excess and zip tie it under the dash so this doesn't fall behind your brake pedal or your gas pedal. Make sure when you cut the edges of this off, you don't cut it too jagged so the next guy jacks up his arm, or do, your call. So then the reverse, you clip this all back up, put the panel back on the side, then put the weather trim back on. Be careful with the weather stripping. It isn't just rubber, there is a piece of metal in there. You don't want to kink it or bend it or it'll never go back right. For this part of the installation, which I think honestly is the hardest part, I'd give it like a 2 out of 10. Honestly, if you weren't trying to make a YouTube video and had all these dyno cables in the way, you'd probably get it done in 5 or 10 minutes. All right, now that you got the cable installed and your edge mounted to the windshield, we're gonna go through the actual tuning process. Up until now, we were just unlocking the PCM. Now the magic actually happens inside the tune. We actually ran into a few issues. It wasn't a big deal, but the tunes weren't available for this specific strategy. It's something that is rare, but it can happen. If it does, there's prompts on there that you can tell you what to do. You contact Edge, they send you the correct file, everything's fine. All right, let's load them up. There's a couple different options: economy, towing, extreme. We're gonna go straight for the extreme. Write an original backup in case there's any issues. You can always stick your factory file right back on there. So once it's done backing up the PCM and TCM, you will get this question, and you can click customize. Gives you kind of a tutorial on what you can adjust and how to adjust it. So you can adjust the limiters. Tire size. It's pretty cool because they can go, I think they can go all the way up to 40-inch tires on this. Yeah, that's pretty impressive. We just have 35, so. All right, all loaded up and done. Just follow the prompts, finish loading, started the truck. Anyone who's not familiar with the Edge, you do get all the cool PIDs. You can change around, customize them, switch the colors, but these are some of the general PIDs that people like and start with. We're off to the dyno, kind of see what kind of results we see out of loading just the tune on a 100% stock truck. Just let it cool down for a minute. We'll get some unloaded runs. So one of my favorite parts about doing a project like this is analyzing the data. So here's the two dyno graphs. We're just going to go over the loaded dyno graphs for analysis and kind of talk about what we can see. The blue line was 100% stock and the red line was tuned. Now this was under load, which does kind of, I'm not going to say it makes it read higher. It's a real reading, but when you apply load to the dyno, that means it's almost like adding weight, simulating a heavy truck in a higher gear versus with no load, it's kind of like first gear, low load, spinning your tires. So as you look at this graph, first of all, you'll see the red, which is the tuned version. It's better in all scenarios. You especially start seeing a lot more power starting at about 1800 RPMs. You start to see the gap growing, but as you move forward more and more, the gap gets greater and greater. So a lot of people like to focus on just the peak horsepower numbers. So peak to peak, we only saw 60 horsepower gain. But what's interesting is that the stock made peak power at 2400 RPMs and tuned make peak power at 27. When you actually look at 2700 RPMs, not comparing the peak to peak, but actually at 2700 RPMs, now you're making nearly 90 horsepower more. And as the RPMs go up, you make more and more horsepower. So although you may be seeing only 60 horsepower gains peak to peak, when you actually get higher up in the RPMs, you're seeing 100 to 150 horsepower gains on the top end, and that is definitely something that you can feel. Once you get up in the RPMs and it's shifting through the gears and the converters lock, you're going to be feeling about 140 horsepower gains over the factory truck, which just feels amazing. So peak torque is up by almost 100, but in the higher RPMs, you're talking about 200 to 250 extra foot-pounds of torque, and that's definitely something you'll feel and that'll really help when you're pulling your trailer. There's no downsides, no losses, a little bit higher of a rev limiter, but it just feels great when you're really on top of it and pushing it through the RPMs. All right, we just got the tune loaded, kind of going for a little test spin. See how it feels just going through a parking lot. So far in the parking lot, I want to say the throttle sensitivity feels a little more sensitive. Nothing crazy, but you can feel it even just barely off idle. You can feel a slight improvement. The dyno numbers were very impressive for just a bolt-on tune and 100% stock emissions on truck. I was impressed. Oh yeah. Woo! Wow. I'll hold on to these boys. That is impressive. So, well, it should send a set of free tires with this tune. It's impressive. What were you, like 550, 560 on the dyno? I don't have it in front of me, but 560 horsepower out of a 100% stock truck is just incredible. You could feel that traction control kicking in as it was spinning the tires. I wonder if we should turn that off. EGC still stayed in check though. That was one of Edge's goals when I talked to him about it. You know, there are slightly hotter tunes out there. Typically you have to delete the truck to run them. And even if you do delete the truck, your EGTs will run pretty high, so you are pushing the limits, which is fine for some people, but other people just want to load something up and go and not have to worry about that, and that's what this thing does. You just load it in and go, and you know it's not going to be pushing the limits of the EGTs or boosts or overspinning the turbo. It's real nice to have that monitor too. You can just see everything on the truck with the new monitor that they include. Basically CTS3, but they call it the Edge Evolution Tuner, so it's a CTS3 with tuning options on there. We'll have to give a longer report, see if we see any mile per gallon increases or any better towing characteristics, but so far driving, it definitely packs a punch. especially above around, I'm going to say 1,800 to 2,000 RPMs, you really start to feel it. I mean, the 2020 6.7s themselves are super impressive. It's incredible what they did just from going 19 to 20. I mean, they almost lowered the RPM band by, I'm going to say 500 RPMs. I mean, anything you could do at 2,000 RPMs in a 19, you can do it almost 1,500 in a 2020. And internally, I know they changed the pistons. I know they changed the injectors. They have a higher ejection rate. And the turbo's obviously different. But those small changes typically won't increase the whole power band by 500 RPMs. Not only did they increase the power band of 500 RPMs, so it means it spools faster, power comes on sooner, peak torque sooner, peak horsepower sooner. It also makes more peak horsepower. So these turbos are pretty small on the 2020 in comparison to the 19. But with a smaller turbo, they spool faster and make more power. And these things hardly ever go over 1,500 RPMs when you're just kind of driving and cruising light throttle. Unless you're really getting on it or you're towing heavy in tow haul mode going down a hill. And right now we're doing 70 at 1,500 RPMs. I mean, we just for fun, let's see, I mean, there's a lot of traffic, but let's see how much boost we can make by 1,500 RPMs. That's, I mean, 30 pounds of boost by 1,500 RPMs is incredible. 30 pounds of boost, no smoke, emissions on tuning. That's unheard of in any other platform. The only other truck that ever came close was a 6.4, and they came with compounds from the factory. But this is the first factory truck with no modifications that I think beats the 6.4 in almost every category. I think maybe when turned up really hot, the 6.4 might make a little more power, but not really. I mean, I've seen these things make over 6 to 6.15 with just a really hot tune on it. And that's right where the 6.4 ended up. We're heading back to the shop now, and the customer's going to come pick it up. We'll let you guys see what he thinks as he drives it around. All right, so how long, you've had this truck for a while now, right?
Almost 4 years.
You got it in 2020.
I did. Okay. November, December 2020.
You haven't really done much, but you had a Banks throttle sensitivity booster on it, but other than that, 100% stock.
Yep.
Bigger tires.
Yep.
Okay. So, as you see, it's got the monitor up in the corner now, which is kind of cool. You'll learn over time what all those numbers mean, but it just lets you track everything on your truck a little better. If you're towing heavy or pushing it hard, you can kind of just like watch the numbers, make sure everything's safe.
Okay, so if I'm towing a heavy trailer or something, it gives me the heads up on some data.
Yeah, if anything's low. The big number in the middle is the one that most people watch, EGTs. You kind of want to keep that under like 1,250 to 1,300. If you hit 1,301, the truck won't just melt. But the longer you spend above 1,250, the more you're in the danger zone. I felt like it took some of the lag out, but I want your impressions, what you think it's like.
Yeah. And it's nice too, because the thing I had before was extremely jerky. Like,
yeah, when you turned up the sensitivity, it felt like more power, but it was kind of like you'd be pressing the throttle 5%, it was really mashing at 50.
Yeah.
It messed with, I think that messes with shift point sometimes too. It kind of makes it shift a little goofy in my opinion. Now I know you might have been concerned with it, but this is not roll cold. It's still a very clean running truck. You're not going to be smoking people out.
Or the whistle?
Yeah, well, no whistle either. Still stock turbo.
I think we just need the external speakers for the whistle.
Yeah, we'll put a little kazoo on the exhaust pipe for you. Kind of just roasting the tires now.
Yep.
Your tires.
Tire budget for my Camaro gets transferred to the truck.
Yeah, I told Edge they should send a free set of tires with every tuner.
Wow.
You will notice that you are going to hit the traction limit, so you'll see a little yellow light come on. It looks just like that.
Yeah.
I mean, you're right at the limit of what these tires can hold in two-wheel drive. Not that you're going to be racing around in four-wheel drive, but you'll kind of feel the truck fall off a little bit. That's just the traction control kicking in, trying to get you not to spin your tires.
I like that. That feels really good, man. It pulls hard. It pulls like an airplane.
It added like 50 to 60 horsepower peak to peak, but if you look at the graphs, and I can show you later, you can see that the stock graph falls off very quickly, and the Edge tuned holds out longer and makes more power. So at redline, you're probably making 150 to 160 horsepower more, but peak to peak, it was only about 60, I want to say. Should drive like stock, shift like stock. Now you do have a bunch of options also. I put it on the extreme trans tune, and the extreme engine tune. But if the trans ever feels maybe too aggressive, too firm, don't like the way it's shifting, there's lots of options in there. You can back it back down a level. Same thing for the engine. Like if you're going to send Julie across country and you're afraid that, I don't know, she won't watch the temps, or you're afraid, you can always back it off, drop it down to I think there's a tow tune and an economy tune in there also.
Okay. It feels, honestly, it feels factory. Like there's nothing
weird about it.
No.
That's what I thought. When I put it on the extreme trans tune, I was slightly worried it was gonna, bang or, be rough, but it just seems very close to factory, but with a bunch more horsepower.
Yeah.
Now this is a very safe tune. They actually said there's probably 50 to 60 horsepower left in it, but your EGTs were instantly at like 1500, and the turbo shaft speeds were beyond what they felt safe and what OEMs felt were safe. So it's also a safe tune.
Cool. Good. Because I just drive it around town for all the normal grocery shopping things.
If we're just driving around and doing all that, you don't need the monitor. Like you don't have to leave it up there if you don't want. You can just put it in the glove box, take the little suction cup off of there. But some people find it interesting to watch the data.
Yeah.
And there's probably 12 data points on there, but you can pick between probably 100 others. There's so much you can learn and look at. Is that even important? You got the important stuff on there.
And this is like warranty safe and everything, supposedly, right?
Yeah, warranty safe. Ford has a rule that, technically they can deny. I've heard of people putting off on aftermarket tires and them denying warranties for like radios. It's stupid. They can't do that. By law, they have to prove that whatever they installed caused the failure. Could they be dicks about it? Yeah. We recommend people just set it back to stock before you go. Yeah. Have I ever heard of anyone having a problem? No. The other thing you have on there now is that DPF load is at 21%. As that goes up, you'll either have to go into passive regen, which just means your truck is naturally making the temps hot enough to burn it off, or have you ever seen the truck go into actual regen? You ever seen it pop up on the dash?
No. Never.
Sometimes, especially as they get older, they'll go into regen more often, and it'll actually like raise the RPMs and dump a bunch of fuel in there, and it'll look like a blowtorch coming out your exhaust pipe.
The only time I've noticed it is when it's idling. If I'm driving, I've never noticed anything while driving.
Typically when you're driving, it'll be like a passive regen or whatever it's doing, you won't notice. But if it ever needs to regen at idle, like the RPMs raise, you'll hear weird noises out the exhaust. Actually, we made a video once to show what it was like, and Alex lit his cigarette on the exhaust. He literally leaned, it was blowing a blowtorch out, and he leaned down and went, and lit a cigarette. It gets that hot. Yeah, so actually, like you were asking about, can you do anything with it? You actually can go into the menu, you can do diagnostics. For example, you can click on it. If you had a check engine light, you can click on that and it would read off the codes to you, anything that's wrong. You can look at trouble codes. The regen thing about the DPF, you can manually regen it yourself, which is kind of cool. Yeah. Sometimes regen doesn't kick in at the most optimal times, and every once in a while you'll be like stranded because of it. But you can do manual regen. When you go into the tune, there actually is a bunch of options that you can change and load for tire size. You can change shift points slightly, make it slightly less aggressive, slightly more aggressive. So you swipe up from the bottom, it kind of brings you the menu. There are performance tests on there. You can add all sorts of other sensors to it. I clicked a button. So add an EAS. That means you can add other gauges to read other things if you want. But in the tuning menu, you can kind of just click over here for tuning, and it gives you all the options. It will walk you through and give you the prompts on what you want to do. You'll have to like cycle the key, turn the key on, turn the key off. If you need to set the truck back to stock, it's fairly simple. We do get asked this question a lot, but you get in the truck, turn the key forward, but do not start the truck. So once you get the key forward, it's not gonna come on because the truck's not started, but you can typically tap it to wake it up because it usually only comes on once you start the truck. Swipe up from the bottom, click tuning, and then you can say restore vehicle. And that's actually got the stock file saved in there, and it'll load it right back and on. So a lot of people, maybe when they sell their truck, they wanna return it to stock, or if you're taking it to the mechanic and it's doing something weird, you can always set it back to stock so then work on it on a factory setting. There's no fear that maybe the tune was interfering with anything. If you're taking it in for warranty work or anything like that, it's always a good idea just to set it all back to stock first. So that's it. All right, there you guys have it. Installation of the new Edge Evolution for your 2020 to 2021 Powerstroke. Huge gains, customers are loving it. If you guys are interested in this, check out our website, the link will be below. If you guys have any other questions or want us to answer anything about this specific product or anything else, make sure to hit us up via email, text message, phone calls, or just comment below.